Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're making a bunch of cool sounds with an octave pedal. In this case it's the Boss OC-5. Let's get it on. So what we're doing today then is making a handful of really cool sounds with octave pedals. In this case, like I said, it's the Boss OC-5. And believe it or not, this is the first octave pedal I've ever had, even though I'm a big fan of garage rock, which is a genre that makes heavy use of octave pedals. When this bad boy came out at the end of 2020, I knew I had to have one, so I went out and got one. And in the time since, I've been getting to know it. I've made a bunch of bad sounds and a bunch of cool ones as well. And it's the 6 really cool ones, in my opinion, that I wanted to share with you today, because maybe you've got an octave pedal and you're not making full use of what you can do with it. So the first sound that we're going to make is garage rock goodness. Now, I've always associated octave pedals with garage rock, with bands like the White Stripes, Jack White, the Black Keys, and even bands like Wolfmother. A lot of those guys seem to use an octave down, and they also seem to use an octave up on their signal, and they seem to always combine it with a fuzz. So I'm using my Digitech Dodd Carcosa fuzz. Now let's make some garage rock sounds. So that was my garage rock sounds then. I hope you enjoyed them. I think adding in a full amount of octave down and octave up really fattens up the sound. You get a little bit of an organy effect, which I'll be coming to later, by the way, more explicitly, but you also get just a full-on super fat tone. The addition of an octave down is something which I think really let Jack White excel in the White Stripes without having a dedicated bass player, for example. And I think a lot of what Wolfmother's best riffs have are use of the octave down. It really fattens up the tone, and it also lets the bass player do something else if they want to. So garage rock goodness is probably the main thing that I'm going to be doing with an octave pedal, and I guess you guys as well. So let's move on to the second thing then, and that is fake 12-string sounds. I got these by just adding in a little bit of octave up and occasionally a smidgen of octave down just to fatten the lower strings slightly. But the reason behind doing a 12-string sound with an octave pedal is that it saves you having a 12-string for a gig. Now a lot of us might play cover sets or something like that, or we might have one song where we have a 12-string sound needed. And instead of taking a whole instrument with us, which is a bit of an annoyance to tune up for on-stage stuff, 12 strings after all, you can get a very good approximation with an octave pedal, so let's go straight into the 12-string sounds. Now the third cool sound I made with the OC-5 is what I call the ambient enhancer. I play a lot of ambient guitar music in my spare time when I'm just noodling away. I find it very relaxing and refreshing, and that requires a lot of big reverbs, it requires delays, swirling, ethereal sounds, that kind of stuff. Go to Chords of Orion, the awesome YouTube channel, if you'd like to hear ambient guitar, then come back and watch this. But basically, if you don't have a big reverb pedal or a big delay, if you've just got an amp with a simple spring reverb in it, for example, you can ambientize, that is a word, you can ambientize your sound by adding some octave up to the signal. And what that does is give you kind of a DIY shimmer approach to your reverb. So I used the Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 head with its built-in digital delay and its built-in digital spring reverb. I added the octave up to get a really nice kind of octave up overtone to the sounds, which really gave it a much more expensive, much thicker, much fatter, and much more ambient sound. The fourth cool thing I've done with the OC-5 is replace my bass player. Now I should say that you can't actually replace a bass player with this pedal, and if you do use it, just like a bass guitar, with just an octave down active and your guitar's signal turned all the way down, it sounds a bit synthy and doesn't track amazingly well. But you can use the pedal to great effect to fatten up riffs, to fatten up garage rock riffs as we showed before, and to fatten up heavier stuff. I played a few Rage Against the Machine riffs as well, where I had the octave down and the octave up activated, and that sounded really, really cool and fat, in my opinion. And there is a super cool mode on the OC-5 called Poly Mode. I'll explain the modes a little bit after the 6 cool sounds, but what the Poly Mode lets you do is play full-on chords, just like your normal guitar signal would, but you can choose how many of the bass strings, or as many of the 6 strings, you have playing a bass signal. So you've got the octave down knob here, 1 octave down, and this dictates how loud the bass sound is. And in the Poly mode, the 2 octave down knob becomes a range knob, and that dictates how many of the strings are playing as bass strings. So what I did was, I had the bass sound at about the same level as the guitar itself. I turned the range knob all the way down, and what that meant was that only the bottom string was playing a bass root note for me. So you'll hear that in some indie riffs, and also in some clean, almost jazzy chordal riffs as well. Bass player. The fifth cool thing that I've discovered with the OC-5 is a bit of a novelty, and that is an organ player. It's kind of like the 12-string in that I think a lot of guitar players are not keyboard or organ players, but you might occasionally want to make that kind of a sound. And what you can do is play with the octave up and octave down settings here, mix them in judiciously with your drive signal to get a sound that sounds a little bit like a Hammond organ. So that's what I did. And the sixth and final cool thing that I did with the octave pedal here was thicken up my lead tone and do something of an approximation of the Jimi Hendrix Octavio octave up lead fuzz sound. Of course I needed the Carcosa fuzz pedal to do that, but it thickened up my lead sound very well, and I got a couple of little Jimi Hendrix sort of tones. Have a listen, see what you think. Okay then, so that was 6 cool things you can do with an octave pedal. In this case, it's been the Boss OC-5, and I've used this pedal now for a couple of weeks and I've really got some interesting sounds out of it. I hope you found a few sounds in here that you can use and that you can test out with your own octave pedals if you've got one. If you've made other sounds which I haven't covered here with an octave pedal, please share those down in the comments. I'm still new to this. I want to learn how to do more. I want to get as much value for money out of this pedal as I can. Just a little quick review of the Boss OC-5 then. I've had it a couple of weeks and I find it really, really fun. I mean, it tracks really, really well. That's one thing that I've always been worried about with octave pedals. When you have the octave down or the octave up activated, you pluck the string, you hear it basically straight away. There doesn't seem to be hardly any latency whatsoever. So that's always a plus point for me. You've got two modes down at the bottom here. The first one is vintage, which is what people associate with analog octave pedals, and the second one here is the poly mode. Now the vintage mode, you can basically only play single notes, or it starts to glitch out and make all sorts of weird sounds, which some people like and some people don't. But the poly mode lets you play up to full-on chords with the pedal, with bass activated. That's a really, really cool thing if you've got a use for it. I would suggest this pedal if that's something you're looking for and your current octave pedal doesn't have a polyphonic mode. I know there are other pedals like the Electro Harmonix POG and the TC Electronic Sub and Up that offer this feature, but there are others that don't. So the rest of the Boss OC-5 then is the Boss story. You know, it's built like an absolute tank. This pedal is not going to break. Nice switch, nice finish, looks cool. You've got an input here and you've got two outputs here. So you've got the direct out there, which lets you just have the direct out of your guitar, and here you've got the output. So if you want, you can send it to two separate speakers to get a super massive guitar bass setup. I'm sure there are other videos on there of people showing how to do that on YouTube, so watch those if you want. I didn't use them in this video. Up on the top here, you've got a guitar bass switch if you're using it on guitar or bass, and that's about it. It's a very simple pedal. And I think in that regard, it was the perfect way for me to step into the world of octave pedals. So that's it for today. This has been the Boss OC-5 and 6 cool sounds you can make with an octave pedal. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you get a few cool new ideas that you can use for your octave pedals and your playing in the future. But that's it for today. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music and I shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.